Hey, do you teach yoga? Have you ever trained to lead yoga classes, to be a yoga therapist? Have you ever owned a yoga studio? Maybe even just wondered what it was like for the women and men up there in front of the room on their mats, leading you through endless Surya Namaskars, down dogs, and pranayamas galore? Well, these are their stories, and mine. I'm Rebecca Sebastian, a 20-year yoga teacher, 10-year yoga therapist, yoga studio owner, and co-founder of a yoga-focused nonprofit. I've done a lot in the yoga world over the last 20 years. Pretty much everything except had a water cooler. You know, a place to share stories, talk about struggles, successes, and find other people who do the same thing that I do. Welcome to Working in Yoga, a podcast and substitute water cooler for yoga folks to connect and build community, to share our unique profession, our challenges, and our journeys with the world. Welcome to Working in Yoga. This week is a revisited conversation with my good friend, Colice Sanders. Colice and I got together on the podcast a couple of years ago to talk about perfectionism. Now, that was back in March of 2024, and how perfectionism had invaded the activism space at the time. This conversation was so needed, and one that I have referred to since we recorded probably about 100 times. So it is truly a thrill to have you all listen to this conversation, especially if you missed it the first time back in 2024. And for me to say that Colice is coming back on the podcast again, yay, to update the conversation. I think things have shifted enough since this conversation aired, which was recorded and aired during the Biden administration in the United States, that it was time to continue this chat. Before we begin, though, this is my reminder that it helps the algorithm give itself a nudge if you like, subscribe, or follow the podcast from wherever you're listening. And I do have a couple of free offerings, including a pricing worksheet in the show notes or on the website www.thesunlightexperience.com/link in bio. So go grab them. And if you haven't considered joining a more formal industry conversation off of Facebook, but with other yoga pros, or have you've been on the fence about joining the back room, I am opening it up to everyone for a month so that we can talk about the state of the profession report that is coming out from Sunlight Media and this podcast on June 20th. So come join us and talk about all the topics that are relevant to you and to us as an industry. Plus, find all of the worksheets, guides, and choose your own adventure posts to help kickstart your yoga professional journey from wherever you're at. Okay, friends, here it is, my conversation with Colice Sanders. Hey, friends, welcome to Working in Yoga. Okay, so this is one of those rare times when I have somebody on the podcast who I know in real life, and I have this such love for. So let me introduce you to Colice Sanders. Colice, please tell everybody who you are and what you do, and then I'm going to tell everyone that I have a mental bracelet of things you say on my wrist that I look
at. Good. Because you are home for me. Okay. You feel like home. Again, I'm Colice Sanders. What do? I try to exist each day, pretty much is what I do. I've lived many, many lives, not to get philosophical. And so in one life, I was a college instructor where I taught women and gender studies at a university in Iowa. And that same life, I was an advisor to college students that were the first in their family to go to college that had documented disabilities or had low income. And so it was my job to support them in navigating an institution that, quite frankly, wasn't built to support that population. And so that entailed a number of things. I also have been a motivational speaker for nearly 20 years. I'm talking a lot about my personal experiences. I enjoy writing as well. I write about different things. I'm working on a memoir. I enjoy writing about DEI, which I also do some facilitating there. And so just a little bit of everything. I will talk later about where you can find my writing or find more information about what I do, but I really want to get started. So
Yeah, okay. So I was on the internet, as I am sometimes, searching through yoga posts because pretty much the only people I follow are like yoga people and you. and and I was seeing all of these posts about a particular topic that social justice activist folks have been talking about in recent months. And I was thinking, and then so I connected with Zaria, who's also been on the podcast, and Zaria and I were like, there's this element of perfection to activism, social justice work, how we show up in that kind of space. And I was like, I will only talk with Colice about this. She's the only one I want to talk about. So, why do we do this to ourselves and each other? Like
Yes.
this idea of how we can be perfect activists. Go.
Yes. Let's go on a journey. Let's go on a
Yes.
journey, and then we'll wrap back to what we're seeing on social media from
Yeah.
our yoga friends who just really don't know how to move forward in light of the war going on in Palestine and Israel specifically. So
Yes.
let's come back to that at the end. But before we talk about anything, I want to say everything that we talk about today, I really hope no one hears something and decides to use this to weaponize against someone who they think is anti DEI or not informed. There's a lot of that going on. And some of the materials I want to share today, I know that person has that specific concern as we're talking about perfectionism. So I just want that disclaimer. This is an invitation to look within yourself deeply and at all of the parts and see how you feel about it. So if we're going to talk about perfectionism, oh,
I
what
love
were you
you
going to say?
so. I was gonna say I love you so much, Khalees. Is what I was gonna say. Go.
Yes, I mean, sometimes we do that. We're like, here, read this. This is why you're wrong and I'm right. And this is what's wrong with you. Bye bye. And so, as always, when you're with me, it's about think about relationship, think about where that person's at, think about what you want to invest in first. And so, I know mainly yoga practitioners listen to this. And so, this is going to be a moment to notice the discomfort, decide on whether you want to go over the edge, decide whether you want to switch something up, and breathe through it. So let's dive in. So I was thinking about the word perfection in itself. Like when you hear someone say perfection, what does that mean? So, of course, I looked up the definition. And basically, Merriam Webster's dictionary says that it's a disposition to regard anything short of perfection as unacceptable. And I thought, yeah, that seems like a very femme sort of experience of perfectionism, sort of like a girl boss braggy way of being like, oh, I need everything to be so perfect because I work so hard, right? Definitely
Yeah.
a way that we're taught to express femininity, in girl culture, we should all be, perfectionists. And so I thought a lot about how we're very lazy with our language. I was thinking about perfectionism in that word, and that word gets thrown around a lot. And I know within the US, we tend to be pretty lazy within our language. And every time we learn a new concept, we find a way to use it at like an elementary school application level. And so what I mean about that is, the weather is so bipolar today. Like weather is not bipolar, or he got me too'd. You cannot get me too'd. Or, I'm such a perfectionist, I only use Apple products. Well, that's not the type of perfectionism we're talking about today. We're talking about actually perfectionism as sort of a tenet of white supremacy, which is a lot different. So I just want to be mindful that we are actually focusing on perfectionism and white primacy is where I want to take you today, and not sort of the girl boss, all my place settings have to be just so. I just want to be clear about that. And so perfectionism really grew as a symptom of maintaining white supremacy. And as we start to think about that more, it's really important to keep that in mind as we then will transition into the yoga spaces conversation. But before we do that, I said that I facilitate DEI, I write about DEI. I just want to break down a little bit about what DEI is to me, because I said that we get kind of lazy with language. And as soon as we learn a new concept, we kind of peanut butter jelly it on everything and smack, and don't think about it. So when I'm talking about DEI, and I'm talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity for me is marginalized identities, because the word diversity means different. It means everything. It means people that played soccer in elementary school, which could be diverse from people who played basketball. Diversity, yay, right? And so when I'm talking about diversity and I'm mentioning diversity or DEI, I'm talking about marginalized identities, identities that are not represented, identities that face oppression, or institutional discrimination. Equity, again, that's identifying and correcting imbalance, inequity, ways that people are hindered and suppressed from enjoying everyday life. And then inclusion is not, again, hey, everyone, you can come on in. We're looking at access, actual entry, the ability to be in these places and to have the accessibility to be able to fully participate. And so it's so important to me that when we talk about DEI, we talk about specifically what that means to the individual who's using that term DEI. So that's what I mean, and that's what I'm talking about. So are we good so far?
I am so good. Like
Okay.
I love hearing you talk about your stuff.
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. So, if you've ever attended a session with me, you're not going to be surprised, or taken my class. We're going to talk about Bacon's Rebellion, because that's the birth of perfectionism. And that's the birth of white supremacy. So, Bacon's Rebellion took place in, I want to say, 1676 to 1677. It happened here in the United States at the time. Nathaniel Bacon, who was really frustrated at the time, it was in the colonies, was really frustrated with the British and the ruling class. And so he led a rebellion in Jamestown, Virginia, that nearly wiped out the colonies. He joined with Indigenous Americans, Africans, Irish, everybody that was there, and nearly wiped out the ruling class because of the unfair treatment and the ways that life was tough, I imagine, during that time. And so the British elites were so upset, primarily that he would join with the indigenous Americans and other Africans, that they created this concept called white and this concept called black. They didn't create brown, they didn't create yellow. They created a system that was white and black at this time. And the way to determine if you were a part of the white system and if you were a part of the black system was skin color, hair type, nose, lips, and of course, eventually your genetic or your ancestry. I'm sorry, your ancestral history. But they created this concept called whites, and they said, okay, if you're white and you're caught rebelling or consorting with the indigenous Americans or Africans, especially those that are enslaved, you're going to get this really stiff penalty for doing that. That is not okay. You should not go against your own, this sort of language. But however, if you are white, we will allow you to have these jobs. We will allow you to have access to these things. But if you are what we consider black now, so at this time, we did have people with African ancestry that held positions of power, authority, mayors, things of that nature. You no longer can hold those. You no longer are considered being able to hold those things. And so this is when we see white being born. And naturally, what do you think happened when people said, hey, you're Irish, you're Italian, you're Polish, etc.? You have to call yourself white now. What do you think happened, Rebecca?
well, well, as a very solid Italian American, I can tell you for sure we assimilated, thank you very much, with our garlic and our curly ass hair.
Yeah, eventually. But at
Yes.
first, everyone was like, white? I'm Polish.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm Italian. I'm Irish. Like, what are you saying? White and black? What is this? And so, more and more laws and more rules started to come about to where our ancestors, your ancestor, my ancestors, they do have some European ancestry, were able to see that white was a better life and future. That if we straightened our hair or washed it more often, if we spoke a different way, if we didn't maybe wear our traditional clothes or cook certain recipes, a job, status, wealth, was waiting for us if we could meld down into this white thing, right? And so then we have the birth of perfectionism. We have the birth of perfectionism. We have the birth of over reliance on objectivity, quantitative. We have the birth of individualism over collectivism, because the majority of immigrants at this time tend to have more of a collectivist orientation. And so, with the birth of white and the birth of white supremacy, we start to see perfectionism creeping in. Our ancestors, our loved ones, changing themselves and strictly trying to meld themselves down into this thing called white, which was so effective today. A number of people that identify white do not know cultural traditions, spiritual beliefs, ways of caring for their health, hair, a number of things that their ancestors did because of this pressure to mold down into white, this perfectionism. And so a lot of times when we talk about DEI and we talk about white supremacy, we, as we should, talk about the ways that others are oppressed, but we don't talk about some of those side effects on what happened with white culture. And there's a resource I'm going to give at the end, but perfectionism is one of them. Paternalism, over reliance on objectivity, either or thinking or binary thinking came into focus with this. Individualism over collectivism, the right to comfort, fear of open conflict, and power hoarding, just to name a few. And I will give a resource that has more of this information. Is any of this meshing with you at all?
I mean, you and I know each other well, so you're just watching me like shake my head. As you know, I'm Italian American, and I know I've told you this story before about 200 years later, after Bacon's Rebellion, my grandma pulling me aside and being like, "Iron your hair and stay out of the sun," because
Yeah.
that's what is ideal, right? You know, I have wild, very kinky, curly hair, and when I get in the sun, I brown up quite a lot, like all of my relatives, because that's what Italians do.
Yes. Yes.
200 years later, 200 plus
Yes.
years later.
And still today, we have something colorism, which is
Yes.
upholding one color or tone for the other within communities of color. We
Yes.
have grandmothers and mothers still saying, hey, okay, you may be African American, but stay out of that sun. Date a lighter or fairer skinned person so that you
Yes.
can have babies that have a better chance. We have people of Latinx, Latino heritage, or Spanish speaking people saying, don't teach your kids to speak Spanish. Then they'll have that accent. They're not going to get very far. So we still have people trying to meld down and, sort of shed some of those cultural aspects to get closer to move into this idea of whiteness, which I think is something that we don't think about or talk about very much. Now, as an African American, an American with African heritage, I often think about how I'm not going to use slang in certain places. I'm going to dress up when I go to the doctor so that hopefully I'll be heard just a little bit more. And how my appearance and how I show up. And if I have extensions, that might be more intimidating. If I'm upset, to make sure that I don't raise my voice, it's still very much with me how I need to ascribe to or deal with those expectations. And quite frankly, it's exhausting. Uh, it's
Yeah.
very exhausting. But we are expected, whiteness, attributes, ways of thinking, ways of operating is the aspiration. It is the default. And that is something that we talk quite a bit about, that we get so mixed up about racism that it's really about mean opinions. It's about me saying, ooh, you're dark and I'm being mean, and not so much about the institution that has sort of a filter or alert set for dark skin, wide noses, hair of a certain texture, and that there's a very specific way we're going to treat with and or limit based on those things. And I feel like we don't talk enough about that.
Yes.
Um,
And obviously, in the yoga space, we're reflecting that within our spaces. We built yoga in the West
yeah,
in a white supremacist culture. So, of course, we reflect that.
yes,
Now, as we move into this space of, we're in modern times, we're fairly we'll call it post COVID. I mean, my friend just texted me on Friday, said she had COVID, but
Yeah.
it's
Post COVID ish.
post COVID ish, post Ferguson, Missouri, post George Floyd being murdered by the police in Minneapolis. We've seen this rise in what we could call the social justice movement. And
Hmm.
isn't it interesting that the first thing I really started to see was how we were using this again, this idea of perfectionism again within that space to regulate each other.
Absolutely.
So say more
Absolutely.
about that.
Well, it makes me think a lot about some of those concepts, social justice warrior, DEI, and other concepts that we just kind of, for lack of a better word, bastardize or just really get wrong. I'm thinking about imposter syndrome. So before I pivot to answer your question, I'm going to give an example of imposter syndrome. We all talk so much about imposter syndrome. And again, some of it is like the examples I gave earlier, like, oh, I'm having imposter syndrome about what photo to post online. Imposter syndrome is actually a research based phenomenon about what happens to marginalized people when they are working in majority cultures and how they end up completing a self fulfilling prophecy. What happens to when you're one of two women in an engineering major or program or business? And how the message is about women not being good at math and engineering and science and STEM end up finding its ways into your mind and perhaps making you have a self-fulfilling prophecy or overly doubt yourself to where you're working twice as hard. That is what imposter syndrome is. That is what it is about. It is about marginalized people dealing with majority issues and struggling and suffering. But we've seen that concept um, just get kind of messed up. It's all over the place now. So when I think about social justice and when I think about seeing a lot of people almost unable to function because as injustices go out in the world, someone has decided that the perfect way, the right way is to black out your picture or say, post a Palestine flag with a watermelon or whatever someone decides should be. And then people going through a depression, not being able to work, not being, feeling like, well, I'm not doing good DEI, I'm not social justicing correctly. It's astounding. It's astounding to see that. And again, the principles that I mentioned before, the binary thinking, the over reliance on objectivity, we can't bring all of that into social justice and DEI work. That's the exact opposite of that framework. And so it's just been confounding to see some of that. I shared that story with you that I follow a Black creator who has been so excited to release this new book, and she's a wonderful writer. And I'm excited to read her new book, but because of what's going on, and only Israel and Palestine, because we're very specific about which war we're going to care about, which group
Yes.
of people is the big one that we should all be caring about, or which unarmed Black citizen that's been murdered is the one that we all should be caring about. This person did not want to promote her book and felt guilty and felt like, no, I'm not a good person if I'm out here promoting a book and living my life when people are suffering only in Israel and Palestine, not like down the street. I'm sure people are suffering. Not that this is, positive or upbeat, but just seeing that is like, wow.
Yes, it is. And again, you and I have had a discussion about this before, and I've had this discussion with other people because it's not to actually act like what's happening in Palestine isn't important and vital, and we shouldn't be advocating for people all over the world to be free, right? Of
Absolutely.
course we should. But also, I mean, I didn't know that in order to be quote unquote good person within the yoga space, I had to make a public statement that said that I'm
Yes,
against children being murdered. Like that
absolutely.
should go without saying, my man.
Yes, yes.
Like,
And sexual assault. Yes.
yes, of course.
Get it in your profiles. Yes.
Why why this group? Why do you think this group? Because I can think of two other groups. one white and one very dark skinned, that both need our support right now, besides the folks in Palestine. Why
Yes.
this group, do you
Yes.
think?
I think that the wellness industry, I think the virtue ethics, which you have talked about in other podcasts that are really great. I think all of that lends itself uh, to this sort of belief that this is the way. And I want to pause for a moment and say, I say this with compassion and love and understanding and not judgment, because I know a lot of people want to do something, right? I got to do
Yes.
something. I care about children and women. I care about the injustice in the world. I got to do something. And so we just glom on to this very fake two-dimensional way of doing it because we feel powerless and we don't know what to do in the first place. And so I say it with love that and compassion. I understand that this is where it's coming from. For some people, I feel. For other people, I know it's performative and it's what they do. You know,
Yeah, I
it
was
was.
I agree 100%, and I think I've said this season before too. We've butted up against this point of tension, and we're not quite sure how to offset the tension of I see this horrible thing happening halfway across the world. I have no idea how to help. And so my way of getting rid of that negative feeling is to make other people feel bad about it so that they
Yes,
feel as bad as I feel.
yes, to
I
shout
don't
them down.
Yes, because I don't know if that's really helpful. I'm pretty sure that's not actually helping people in Palestine.
Yes. But we have this idea that there is a set way and a script that we do everything. That's the perfectionism. There is a
Yes.
right way, a bulleted right way,
Yes.
point one, point A, etc., to do everything. And that way also becomes a weapon to use against others,
Yes.
and a way also to not listen to those being oppressed and in need. Because we can say, okay, well,
Ooh.
we give this many, right? It's a handy little tool because
Mm.
we can also shut you up about that. Oh, but this many people did this and that. You're just trying to play the victim. You're just whining. And so it ends up, and again, it's perfectionism. This perfectionism, which again in our mind we think, oh, I'm striving to do good. I'm striving to do my best. But no, not so much.
Riddle me this. Okay, so one thing that I came up against when I started doing bigger things in my life, opening a yoga studio, having employees traveling to teach, right? There's this point where you get caught in your head about doing something because you're afraid that you won't do it right. So you don't do it at all. And I
Yes.
sometimes think that happens in this activism space. So instead of actually going down the street and doing something that directly
Hmm.
impacts your neighbor, which is scary and hard, and you have to make new friends and you have to go places you don't know, and maybe you don't have time and, all the things. Instead of doing that, we've kind of tricked ourselves into thinking we've done something by leveraging social media. Does that
Yes.
feel correct? Or maybe
Yes.
I'm on the right track?
Absolutely. We are a culture, and so that was a resource I was going to offer later. Looking at Angela Duckworth's either her TED Talk or her book about grit, and Carol Dweck's book about growth mindset.
Love her
So
books. Yes.
yes, or TED Talk. Um, we are a culture, especially being a white supremacist culture, where we just talked about having to meld down and be accepted as this one thing, right? So there's not a lot of room for error. And so we do not allow mistakes. You can't make mistakes. And you certainly can't confront people or talk to them about mistakes or how they impacted you. So with that culture, social media activism is so great because it's not you. You're not in that neighborhood, in that person's living room. You're behind a screen. You can post a thing, like a thing, shred someone in the comments, and then go. There's no risk. There's no real risk to doing it. But everybody can see, we think of social media as sort of our storefronts or our stoop, right? Everyone can
Ooh.
see Black Lives Matter. Trans is beautiful, all the things. You've got that out there. You can go out there and not take any real risks in life and really not make any real impact by using your stoop that way. And I think that goes right back in line with the the tenets of not wanting to make mistakes, not being okay with that. A lot of times with DEI, people will say vehemently, I want to make a difference. I want to know more. I want to learn more. But what if I say something wrong? What if I say the wrong thing? And it's like, well, first of all, you've probably already said the wrong thing to a lot of people. We all have. I do. I probably am right now.
Yeah, same.
But that's okay. That's how
Yeah.
we learn. We make mistakes. We learn, we listen, we lean in, and then we take that experience to the next. But that fear of getting it wrong, that fear of being called a racist in that specific instance, but not in others, which is always tricky to me. I feel
Yeah.
like you don't want to your face in conversation, have someone say that you're a racist, but you're also okay with being a part of a racist institution and right, and going along with that, but just don't
Yeah.
call me that. That fear, I think, is why social media activism is like a perfect fit. You don't have to
Yeah.
risk anything. You don't have to really lose anything.
So if I say to you, but Colice, it's about awareness.
Yay. Yes. It's about awareness. I seen the greatest post. I was talking with you about this, about how, like, on Trevor Noah, if you know, the former host of The Daily Show, for anybody who watches that, Adele, who's a super famous singer, Taylor Swift, Beyonce, that their pages were inundated with these demands of bringing awareness, because they have millions of followers, about the war. And it was in the name of awareness, but it was very specifically branded that either you say free Palestine, put up your watermelon and the flag, or you're an oppressor and a colonizer, or you say support Israel. And if you don't, then you're anti Semitic. And you need to do that to bring awareness. Uh, that's not bringing awareness. And I remember someone's comment said, we're effing aware. We're aware already. The awareness level is gone. Let's go to the next thing. Everyone's aware. Everyone is absolutely aware. But a lot of times, even with DEI, we get stuck on awareness. Hey, we're all different. We're aware of that too. Let's move on to equity. We got it. We know we're all different. We're redheads, we're black. We've got it. Now we need to move on. And so I think, again, social media lends itself to that. And I feel like we're kind of awareness addicts. When I think about medical issues and stuff, we're like itching for the next, disease or disorder to throw our acronyms on it. Let's get a ribbon on it. Awareness, yay. But meanwhile, the people actually affected could use our attention. My favorite example of this is breast cancer awareness.
Yes.
We're pretty freaking aware that breast cancer happens, yet on our cereals, our bread, clothing, I know Torrid, Lane Bryant, Victoria's Secret have these awareness campaigns, and that awareness is really about making money. It's not really about supporting
Yes.
not only the research. We always want to, oh, research, research. Okay. We've got the research thing going. What about the people that are affected by this? What are we doing for the people who actually in their lives have breast cancer? Are there resources available for them to take them to appointments, to sit with them that can't afford medication? Like, those are the things that we need. But instead, I'm buying this shirt or this jacket or this bread or this ribbon for awareness because I want people
Yeah.
to be aware. They're aware already. And so I think that that's just something unique to the way that we do our activism, whether it's online or even boots on the ground.
You're really right. And this is actually, I don't even know if I've told you this story. And like I said, you and I know each other pretty well. My first job out of college was I was a professional fundraiser for the American Cancer Society.
Ah,
And this was, and I'm 46. No, 45. I will be 46. But the difference between how fundraising happened 20 years ago, 25 years ago now versus today. Like I was there before the pink t-shirts,
mm-hmm.
and then I would talk to my colleagues after I left that organization about how their jobs changed. Like it used to be, we were out there in public connecting with cancer survivors. Hey, do you want a
Yes.
wig? How can I get you wig support? Hey, how can I get you, like you said, transportation? What's your life like? What's your family situation like? Does your family need support? And then all of a sudden, this thing kind of happened, this awareness thing, where everybody was like, oh, we need to talk about it more. And even at that time, in like 2001 or 2, people were pretty aware breast cancer existed.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
knew. But then it was all stickers and pink t-shirts and all that. And now it's a very
yeah,
different job.
yes. Because we want to be a part of it. And
Yeah.
it feeds that selfish, self-centered need that then I get, you give me the sticker and I got this. And it's just like social media where you can go, huh, look at her. She's a champion for breast cancer. Look at all that pink she's wearing. She's out there stopping the breast cancer. No, no, she's not really. I think about I'm diabetic. And so I think about how much money we're like, we got to research diabetes so we can stop it. And it's like, okay, sure, sure. But there are millions of us that can't afford diabetic medication,
For
can't afford
real.
the supplies, work in places or live and grow in places that do not lend themselves to us being able to check our blood sugars or things of that nature. Like, I would really appreciate, and you might not even have to give me or donate money. You could just stand with me or write a letter or, to support me as a person with this thing. Or we could keep throwing money at the research to stop it. And you can get your jacket or whatever bumper sticker at the same time. But it makes us feel like I'm totally guilty of this. I'm not sitting here
All
on
of
high
us.
saying I'm
Yes.
not.
All of
Because
us.
again,
Yes.
we feel helpless. We want to do something. There are so many things, what do we do? What do we do? But it is like walking down the street or going to that neighborhood around some of these things. And when I think about when we get into neurodivergence and mental health, it feels really gross. I have a child who's on the spectrum for autism. The amount of money we throw at research because we got to stop this thing, right? We got to do more autism research so we can figure out how to stop it. And it's like, okay, so it's a disease then. So again, that effort is along the lines of not we got to support families. We
Yeah.
got to make sure that schools are honoring 504s and IEPs if they're needed. We got to make sure
Yes.
that children on the spectrum are included in gifted programs and because they're not so extroverted, some of them. No, we've got to like put money into the research so we can stop it. And it gets gross.
But that's not as sexy as making a social
No.
media post
Yes.
saying how shitty you are for working during a national or international work ban to support a country that you've not actually physically donated money to.
Yes. Yes.
That's not as sexy.
And to step on toes, to be like super controversial, there's a lot in within Christianity and missionary work that kind of feels similar to that. I'm going to go for spring break to this
Yes.
country, which is going to be
Ooh.
awesome for me because I've never been there and I'm not going to have to pay. And I'm going to help sweep around or, fix a fence. And I did it, and I'm probably going to get a jacket or something. There's a lot within that. And I'm not saying that it is the Bible that says, thou shalt go on spring break and, take a bunch of pictures. And I'm not saying it's the Bible that does it. I'm saying it's the way that we interpret that text and have for a while about having these empty, sort of actions towards issues and those struggling. And then we go back to where we are. And so there's something mixed in, I feel, with that. There's a little like Christian, principles or, that I think
Yeah.
make us feel comfortable in doing that. I would have to argue a lot with my students when we'd come to this topic. And they're like, wait, I went on spring break or I went the whole summer. And you're saying that me going there is not, I'm not creating change or something. I'm not saying that. I'm saying your week during spring break might have brought a smile. Yes, the fence is fixed. It's so much bigger than that.
Yes.
Yes.
There is so one of the things that made me rethink that sort of idea was our discussion about, believe it or not, trophy hunting. And I don't know if we've ever talked about
Oh,
this, but I
okay.
find trophy hunting fascinating because
Hmm.
we hate it as Westerners,
Yes.
and countries in Africa use the money that they gain from all of its rich white Westerners in trophy hunting to support their conservation efforts. And for some reason, they're doing it wrong. And we've
Yeah.
told them how they're supporting conservation in their countries
Hmm.
halfway across the world is not correct because the world's oldest giraffe was killed by a guy with $100,000.
Yes. Yes. We're not telling ourselves to stop going halfway around the world to kill
No,
the
no,
world's oldest giraffe.
no.
Yeah. Yes. We're telling you, the humans in his habitat, that it's
Yes,
wrong for them. Yes.
it's
Yeah.
fascinating this idea that our moral superiority will just
Absolutely.
it invades everything.
Our society was formed that way, though, that whites get to be in charge because they are morally superior. And there's all the science and writing and objectivity to test, to look at brains, to look at body parts, to look at the African continent, to justify that we're just the moral, whites are moral and they know what to do and they should be in charge because they've got their bullet pointed plan and you're natural leaders.
Yes.
And that takes over even in social justice work, in DEI work. I'm going to admit something. I'm used to be a professional conference goer for my line of work, with TRIO programs. And I've been that person who sat at a conference and bitched about how unorganized it was, right? I wouldn't have, of course, we shouldn't be eating at this time. We should move it that way, or why would you have this speaker here? Or, did you look at the swag bags? What was really in there? So lost on, and that's the performing of, being a part of an organization. And again,
Yes.
you've got to have that perfection, right? um, that's a part of what we end up doing. That's what we're taught. That's what's ingrained. We pick, 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 pick. It's not perfect. And we start assessing from the time we get there until we leave. Um, Sort of that
Yeah.
entitlement, but
Yeah.
missing the complete mission. Because anytime I've been at a TRIO conference, it's been about the students, that there's not enough money and resources to support these students. But even in that space, I'm evaluating the coffee and the dessert choice after,
Yes.
you know?
Right? Oh my God, me too. We're,
Right,
we're probably there together. Like, that's
right.
not where that should go.
I would have done this better because we're so good at it.
Yeah,
We're so
right.
good at how should this be perfect? How should every be, absolutely down to a finite level instead of focusing on the overall mission or goal. We're taught and trained to do that. I'm really good at that. Not a thing to brag about, but I'm so good at that. It's a detriment to my mental health, my
Yes.
self care. I won't go to bed. I won't. And these are things, these are humble brags, right? Those are not things to brag about.
Yes.
Those are not
Yeah.
things to brag about. But we judge that way. And so I think about the people who are like, well, I'm not even gonna, have my business open right now because the suffering that is going on, specifically in Israel,
Yes.
um, I'm not gonna do that. I'm a martyr because I care so much and I want people to see that I care, or I'm going to shout down people, or I'm going to spend, every comment I have, I'm going to throw a watermelon in there.
Yep.
Um, it becomes like a part of people's identities, and thinking good of those people, like I said, coming from compassion. I know part of it comes from feeling out of control. Um, but some people, that's part of their identities.
I'm going to tell everybody about my imaginary bracelet that's someday going to be a real bracelet. I'm going to send you a copy, Colice, of what I think about this thing that you taught me that was so radically life changing. This idea that the antithesis of this is to lean into relationships.
Yes.
And every time I want to be an asshole, which, in all fairness, is a lot. I mean, it's a fair bit of pausing to remind myself to lean into relationships first because that's the world I want to build and be a part of. So can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah.
And I'll probably
That's
cry.
that's a principle that I learned. I've done a lot of diversity training over the years. I've tried a bunch of different programs and philosophies. My favorite one is the NCBI program, National Coalition Building Institute. And that is where they taught us to think about the relationship. And so this our idea of teaching and educating and talking down to people when they make mistakes. And I want to let me give you the history of that thing. Let me tell you how. And instead, it asks us to first privately think about, well, is this a relationship I'm invested in? Is this a relationship that's important to me? Is this a relationship that I want to extend energy, time, or effort into building or nourishing? And if that answer is yes, enter into whatever it is you want to say or ask for or point out, thinking about that relationship. And that was so important as I was coaching my college students who were going home for Thanksgiving during the presidential election when Trump first was elected. And there was a lot of tension for people, my grandmother, my uncle, so and so. And it's like, well, how do you feel about that relationship? Well, I do love them. They say things that make me okay. Lead with that relationship, lead with that love, care, and concern. Avoid trying to turn, you need to know this and this term and that, and start with the relationship. Still stay true to what you think. Murdering children is wrong. That's still
Yes.
okay. That's your core, that's your belief, that's your value. That's still okay to say. But coming at it from a relationship standpoint, and I think you'll find that your approach is different. You can't use the relationship on social media when you are being a social justice platform warrior and leaving these comments about, well, actually, if you read this, that's not thinking, you don't even have a relationship with that person
Yeah.
to be able to do it. Thinking about your relationship, again, takes that time to sit down and to recognize and to engage with that person as an imperfect human being. And you too are an imperfect human being, and you want to connect with them and say, hey, I noticed that you said, I'll use my favorite one, thinking of a friend of ours. I noticed that you keep calling Trump an orange pumpkin. And while, I understand that you're upset with Trump and you don't like his policies, but by making fun of his skin color, you're really adhering to a white supremacist belief that skin colors are wrong or right. And that bothers me. This is what it made me think of. And then engaging and listening to that person. And I know for that one, for some people, that one's a really tough one. But when you lead with your relationship, humanity to humanity, um, a lot more healing and understanding happens there. I've had a lot of people who maybe felt like who I kind of get on my friends' nerves. This is about me personally, but anytime we decide I don't like someone, that we don't like someone, me and this friend, we're like, oh, we're at the conference or whatever. We're like, oh, we don't like that person. We don't like what they said. We don't like what they're doing. They're not doing it right. I'm going to be friends with that person by the end of, I am. It's just going to happen. And it pisses my
Yes.
friends off every time. Why is that? Because I start thinking about their humanity. I start thinking about, well, they're a person and I'm a person. Who knows what their background was, how they came to this idea, and not a superficial like pity, like I am superior and they don't know what I know. Just they're a human being. I'm a human being. Whatever it is they're saying in this moment that I disagree with or that I find offensive, it comes from a place. And do I want to take the time to hear more about that, to hear their story and experience, and then give them mine? And when you do that, when you lead that way, then it is hard to keep enemies. It is hard to like have people to push against. And I've had several friends say that about me. Like, I was so sure this was the one that we didn't like. Next thing I know, you're having lunch with her. Because it's the humanity. It is the humanity. Once you start thinking that way, it changes you. It does change you.
Yeah, it's just, it reminds me so fundamentally, like connection and community are like two of my core values. Like they're really
Yes.
important to me, and it's just how I want to show up in the world. And like,
Yes.
I think I'm not, I say this jokingly a lot on this podcast and elsewhere. I enjoy being right. And I don't
Oh
think
yeah.
like that's not a unique trait. I feel
Being
like
right's delicious.
it's great. But you know what I love more is that yes, so we're recording this on a Thursday. Tuesday, I got to meet with three different people who I had amazing conversations with, who are just people that I connected with in the world, who, like from farmers markets and elsewhere. And I was like, aren't I so lucky to know these amazing human beings?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's so much more important than being
Yes.
right. I
It
can't believe I said
absolutely
that.
is.
It,
Yes.
it made a
And
bleak
hearing
paste
people's
taste in my mouth, Colice.
seriously, hearing people's stories.
Yeah.
I can't think of the gentleman's name who goes around and he goes to like KKK rallies. He's an African American man, and he like interviewed them and would talk with them, and he'd be so
Right.
surprised. Yeah, that he and people
Yeah.
are like, "How? How can you do that?" Because he's engaging them with his humanity, and they talk to him, don't they? Right? If they were really staunch KKK members, why would they even talk to him? They can't deny his humanity and his respect and willingness. Now, he has the capacity for that. That's not me. You got to go on your own
There it
capacity.
is. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I am not saying go to anti-Semitic, area and soak it. No, 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 no. Your capacity. You have to think for you. You have to decide for you. No one can tell you. But it is a magical sort of thing. And so I feel like when we're doing DEI stuff and social justice stuff, I got to get the terms, I got to get the history, I got to get the jacket and the bumper sticker. Um, and I've got awareness, but how does that impact you? And what does that get in touch with about the things that you were taught? I told you that I was going to bring up Friends as an example
Yes.
of white supremacy and perfectionism. And so I love Friends. I'm very sad that we lost Matthew Perry. I own the entire DVD set, all 10 seasons.
Oh my
I
gosh.
pretty I pretty much watched it all during the pandemic on loop. I could probably quote some stuff verbatim. Okay, so I want to say that. I also want to say, as a feminist, some ways that we get our rocks off is looking at things that happen in society and then pointing out certain theories or concepts that are DEI related as an example. Yes, I know sometimes we just want to watch Friends and it can be Friends. We don't need to analyze it, but sometimes we can. And so if you really love Friends, don't listen to this part. But I love it. But I can also say it's wrong, like a family member. I love you, but you're wrong. This decision is wrong. And we even had one of the creators come and donate to African American scholarships, which is interesting, and apologize for some of the blatantly racist things that happened on Friends. And again, we're remembering racism as a system and not as one person's idea to be mean, right? We've got to get
Yeah.
away from that. This is a systematic issue. So, anyways, Friends, on the Barbados episode, so it's going to be season 10, episode one. One of the characters, Monica and Chandler, they're married. They go to Barbados, and because of the humidity, Monica gets frizzy hair. And so in this episode, there's two episodes actually, over 34 times do the characters make negative comments about her hair. Her hair becomes kinky and curly, and then they end up making it just huge, just larger than life. And the characters repeatedly throughout these two episodes make these comments. And so I actually looked at the script, wrote down how many times they say, categorized it all. And I thought, okay, well, what could we glean from this Friends episode, which is a predominantly white cast living in New York, having white issues? Um, what could we glean from this about Black hair? One, that Black hair is weird, that Black hair is unattractive and masculine, to the point where at one point her husband says he's going to have to put a pillowcase over her head to have sex with her. Um, Her husband calls her several Black male names: Allen Iverson, Weird Al, Buckwheat, etc. Um, and then he also makes a comment that this is the first time in our marriage that he's felt like the attractive one. And so over and over and over, they're taking shots about Black hair. And again, that Black hair is too much. But on the other flip side of that, for the first time, it really made me realize how whiteness is reinforced on white women. And I had never, it really made me like have to like step into that and think about that, because being an African American who's had to battle, oh, your hair's nappy and how do extensions work, and people constantly pet and rub and touch my hair, to this day as if I'm like a lamb on a petting farm. That's my side, that's my experience, but I had never thought about the parameters that white women are held to have quote unquote white hair, the excessive washing, the straightening, the products. until I seen this riffing on her, just relentless riffing in the season because she was not looking like a good white lady. She wasn't upholding that standard. And so it's just fascinating to me.
I have to tell you, while you were reading that just now, as a person who's done inner work, I had to tell myself to physically not go like this and tie my hair about like I was
Yeah,
seriously just now like, don't touch your hair, don't touch your hair. You've spent
yeah,
your whole life trying to make your curls look like pretty curls versus like kinky curls. Like, and even still, like I feel that on my skin. Like, yeah, for real.
yes,
That's
yes.
a thing,
And
please.
you don't think this is white supremacy, right? You think,
Yeah,
no, I'm trying to be pretty or attractive
yeah.
or, whatever we assign to people with, hair, with coily hair or, like frizzy hair. You would think that frizzy hair, we've got to solve that like we're trying to cure cancer. Like it's a disaster. Like, oh my
Yes.
God, where are the ribbons for the frizzy hair? Oh no, not frizzy hair. And again, that's to conform to this idea
Yeah.
of whiteness. And if we take a shift from racism and swing into heteropatriarchy, this idea that of course men should be at the head, but they should be dominating women. Think about all of the things that women are supposed to do to their bodies, that as the natural state of their bodies to conform to this idea of femininity. Taking away hair, you've got to have, all the things that we must do to conform to this idea of the attractive, desirable cis, female. And it's in that same camp or string of things.
Yeah.
But hair fascinates me. We're the only state in the United States that has a law where you have to have a braiding license. And that's really interesting. You could do time or go to jail for braiding without a license here.
In
We're
Iowa?
the only state
Huh.
in the United States, yes, in Iowa. And we have prosecuted some people. I think about young people who are suspended or kicked out of their school, African American, for having curly hair. There's
Yeah.
so many rules and laws. Our idea of professionalism, perfectionism is white supremacist standards, right? You can't have stuff on, you can't wear headscarves, your hair can't be unkept,
Wow.
right? Like, wait, what is unkept? What is unkept hair? Isn't it okay? I worked on a college campus for you to slap a hat on that sucker and go like, that's unkept hair,
Yeah.
right? But it's like, well, but really, we don't want your hair to be too frizzy, kinky, too coily. It's too much. The young lady who was sent home from Chick-fil-A and humiliated African American
Yes.
because she got braids, and they said, well, you violated our hair color standards, and the braids were the same color as her hair. But it's the same. There's a lot of rules about hair, and I don't think there's as much awareness unless you happen to be born with hair like yours,
Yes.
where people don't understand it's work, and
Yeah.
there's probably some pain and feelings behind that. And there shouldn't be. It is weird to live in a state where my hair is fascinating still in 2024,
Yes.
where people pet and feel my hair and just are wow. And it's like there's nothing significant or unique about this hair. It's been around for centuries, but
Forever. Forever and
yeah,
ever.
yeah, yeah. But
So
enforcing that,
that all comes into why we need to be perfect social justice warriors. How
yes,
exhausting. I'm tired. Colice, are you
yes,
tired?
yes. I never liked the social justice warrior. I'm like, wait, what? We're
Same.
fighting crime? Like, wait, hold on. When
We're
did this
Batman.
Yeah, like when did this distinction? I don't even like trauma warrior. No offense, but it's like I
Nah.
don't like that label.
Yeah.
Honestly, let me blow your mind. I don't like survivor. I don't like
Same.
the term survivor. I don't.
Same.
We're so afraid of the word victim as if being a victim doesn't exist, and you're being a pessimist by saying that you were a victim. So I don't like survivor either. I'm
Same.
not a sexual assault survivor. I've been a sexual assault victim. And whether
Also
we want to
same.
dress it up and say survive, like I'm not on the other side of that shit. I probably never will be. Um, Victimization happens.
Yeah.
And we have so much playing the victim, using the victim card. We have this fear that people lean into it. That's why I said those same rules, then you can use it to smack, the other way with it. I'm not a warrior. I'm not a survivor. I've been a victim of things.
If the apocalypse comes and we are living through that, then you can call me a survivor all you want. That's
Yes.
fine.
Yes.
Until then, I would prefer to not be cheered on and life coached just to exist. Like, I don't need your cheer. I'm fine.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, you know what I
Tell me
mean?
about your trauma, but make it upbeat.
Yeah.
Don't bum
Yes.
me out.
Yeah, I do think it's a way for people to offset the discomfort they feel by talking to those of us who have been victims of sexual assault, and other
Yes.
horrible crimes. Like
Yes.
it's a way for people to offset their discomfort for sure.
Yes. So, I was thinking about your second podcast, and I think, oh, I can't remember his name now. Dr.
Shamranganathan.
Yes. Okay. He was talking about teaching and learning, and that there's a difference between me having the power and saying, even the term empower you, right? I've got the
Yeah.
power. I'm going to give you some of your power.
Yes.
Yay, me, right? I don't like that term either. So, anyways, he was talking a lot about that. And so, but instead, you meet people where they're at and say, hey, here are some concepts. It's up to you to investigate it. So instead of me going into the classroom and saying, uh, victim actually happens, and by not using the word victim, we're trying to avoid our discomfort. I will lead a conversation. We'll talk about the term victim. What do you think? And the usual things will come up. People just try to lean into it. They want to use the victim card. They just want to be down. They want the sympathy. And then I will have them for their homework read about a soldier who was actually set on fire and assaulted and refused to report it because she didn't want to be a victim. She didn't want to be seen as a victim. She did not take action because of that. And I asked them, is she a victim? And they're like, well, yeah. Okay. So really, it's just like the deserving poor. We've had that conversation, right? There's
Yes.
deserving
Yes.
poor, there's poor. No, 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 no. There's just poor.
Yes.
We are victims. Somebody crashes into my car. I'm not a survivor. I'm a victim of a car accident, right?
Yes.
And so, but it's up to them to kind of get in touch with, like, well, why is there so much talk about, people, wanting, victim blaming and playing the victim, the race card, the woman card, the trans card, the disability card? Like, who does that serve by us diverting our conversation towards that and not towards people's needs? And it's beautiful to see when those conversations take place. And a lot of times, sometimes that gives people permission to realize how they've been victimized. And then I'm like, okay, now we need a therapist in here because I'm not trying to unpack your past trauma. I just want you to think about this concept. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Counseling office is there. There have been a number of young women who have been sexually assaulted, and we have that conversation. They've never seen it that way. And then they're like, oh my goodness, because they didn't want to be the victim. They didn't want to
Yes.
cry and be the victim. And so they didn't say anything, and they went to breakfast or hung out with that person after, even though everything in their body felt wrong, but they didn't want to be that victim, even though it wasn't something that they wanted to happen, and they made it clear. And so in that moment, they'll be like, oh, I was a victim. And it's like, that's not for me to say. Here's the counseling center.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, exactly.
let's not be so afraid of that word victim, because people are victimized. And so, yeah, just got me off on that tangent. I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry, because actually I feel like we can pull this back to our original discussion about perfectionism and like social activist spaces,
Yeah.
because there is sort of, as you said at the beginning of our recording, it's important that we're define our language and our terms and we're precise with our language. That it is often easier for us, I think, to see victims far away from us than it is for us to
Mm-hmm.
see victims close to home, which I think is also why feeling like you're advocating for the Palestinian people feels more comfortable than
Yes,
understanding that you could actually leave your house and support people who are being victimized in your neighborhood.
absolutely.
And I want that for all of us, because that,
Yes,
I think, is how our world gets better.
yes. And maybe not even being victimized, but people that could just use your support, could use a
Yes.
ride, could use a nursing home visit where you play checkers. There's so many ways, actionable ways, that we can have an impact beyond the hollowness of
Yeah.
social media. And I think that's one thing that we were talking about, parlaying that, I try to never lose sight of the fact that social media was designed to rate hot chicks and hook up with people.
Yes.
That was Facebook. That was the whole point, was to post nude and partially nude photos of women on college campuses. And now somehow, because they've told us it's social media and it's a way for us to connect with friends and family and la la la, we're buying that as this thing that should have such a presence in our life. And I don't think that it should.
Yeah. Now we're just rating hot activists, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We've got a top 10. If you've got all the things in your bio, the correct
Yes.
flags, the correct colors, you've hit the top of your mark.
Yes. So selfless. So, oh my goodness. Yes. Instead of the things that are, going on in our own neighborhoods and our own homes. And not to say that we shouldn't care, or that, we don't need to reach out to our representatives and make our voice heard. Like, that's the channel that you
Yes.
go through for
Yes.
international things, or really, really do your research for donating things.
Please.
Because unfortunately, that stuff goes to brochures and those cool jackets we've been talking about.
Yeah.
So you
Yes.
really want to make sure. But there are things that we can do. And also in allowing and not assuming that if someone doesn't have that on, if they're a page or center or whatever, that they're not thinking about or struggling or feeling or have dealt with it in some way. Like, you've got to have it up there. I am an African American. I've never blacked out my freaking Facebook profile. I never have Black Lives Matter and I don't need to have any of that in there. That doesn't mean anything to me. I support Black Lives Matter 100% and actually support them, and so it gets us, it's like dress rehearsal, theater, so
Yes.
much. And it's not really getting at the heart of that. And I know for some of us, if that's all we can do is throw up our okay, but getting angry and expecting others and all of that, it gets out of hand. I definitely would say that. So if you're feeling lost, I guess, and distraught about the wars, because what about Ukraine and Russia? um
What about
if you're
Africa?
feeling lost, what about what about our governor who doesn't want to extend food stamps because there's already so much obesity? I mean,
Yes.
if you're if you're feeling distraught about that, there have got to be ways that you can feel like you can work through. Find your people that you can talk with about that. But the thing that I would say for my people that I'm worried about, it might be time to log off.
Yeah.
If it's got you to that point, it might be time to log off. Take a beat, take a breath. And maybe you can't exactly, other than talking to your representatives or trying to really do a deep dive into ways to donate funds or resources or things, but maybe there's someone in your town that could benefit from you supporting, for you doing something smaller. And so that small act of kindness maybe could generate in your area. Um, and maybe that's the best that you can do. And that's okay.
Your imperfect action trumps your perfect post every time.
Absolutely. Every single time. Every single time. So I think, yeah, to wrap that up, it's being intentional about our language and looking into the things we say, not calling our cell phone schizophrenic or bipolar or things, like being more intentional about that. Leaning into a better understanding of whiteness and white supremacy beyond the
Yes.
social justice warrior anti, really looking into some of those tenets that I talked about. The website is whitesupremacyculture.com. And the author really asks that you don't use that information just to shove it down someone's throat, just to shut someone down, just to shout and educate at them, but instead to use it for deep introspection of yourself. And so looking more into those resources to inform your DEI practice your investment in social justice, your community, what small things can you do, depending on what your resource are able to do. Those are really the ways to, honor your humanity while making an impact. Log off of Facebook. Or, like we said, I do not condone murder of children, women,
And that
people,
should cover everything.
everything that will and can happen. That
Yep.
should be
That should cover it all. Khalees, tell
a
people how to find you.
statement. You can find me on Instagram. Now, I said all this stuff about social media. I'm not good about posting on social media. I have these accounts, but I love people and I like to connect with people one on one. And so me just posting little things doesn't get at that. But Instagram is my thing. I'm on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, Facebook less. I have a website, which is my name, Colice, Colice.Sanders.com. So you can find me on my website. My writing is there, or links to my writing. And my website, if you'd like me to come and do like a diversity, DEI training or anything of that nature, you can find it on my website. And that's where I'm at.
I love you so much. Thank you for this conversation.
Yes. Thank you. It always feels like home when I'm with you because you're a Davenport girly.
Yep.
And it just always feels like going home when I talk with you.
You're the best. Thank you so much for this conversation, Colice. I really cannot wait for everyone to hear what we talk about in the updated conversation coming out in July. Next week is a final revisited conversation with Dr. Shyam Ranganathan. He is also a guest during the Perfectionism series of 2024, and it is a gem of a chat. So until then, let's go get to work, my friends, and I will catch you around the water cooler next time.